Hey everyone, Reaper here again with another video. This time it is part 3 of my favorite comics series. You know, I have a lot of favorite comics in my collection. They're my favorites for various reasons, and that's why I do this series. I talk about those reasons, why this particular book or why that particular book is considered one of my favorites. And like with the other two, this video will also focus on two comics, and future videos will focus on two comics. Okay, so let's start off with one of my favorite comics that I sometimes forget about in my collection. The reason why I forget about it is because not necessarily this particular copy, but the book has been in my collection since I started collecting, a year after I started collecting. So let me show you. Giant Size X-Men #1. It's a 6.5, so it's a nice book. Not too bad. Not necessarily high grade, but pretty good for me. Like I said, this particular copy hasn't been in my collection since I started collecting, but a copy has. I purchased this one and then I sold my original copy. Now, the reason why this is one of my favorites in my collection is because it's a lot of firsts. I know some people say Foom 10 is the first appearance of, is it Foom 10? First appearance of Colossus and Storm and Nightcrawler and all that. Maybe so. Maybe so. I mean, I'm not here to argue that point. But I do think it's Giant Size 1 is the one that drives the market. This is the one that the market looks at when it comes to first appearance and value. But it's a great book. It reignited X-Men in the comic book public and started Chris Claremont on his journey. How many years has he written X-Men? From 75 to 91. It's a long time. He pretty much reinvented the entire 16 years, something like that. He reinvented the characters, reinvented the series, and made them, during his run, one of the most, if not the most, popular Marvel Comics series, X-Men, Uncanny X-Men. So anyway, that alone makes it one of my favorites. I mean, I loved the new character. I liked the old characters too, like Iceman and Cyclops and Beast. I didn't have a problem with any of them, Jean Grey. But these characters really did it for me. I loved Wolverine. I enjoyed Storm and Nightcrawler. They were just all so interesting, and they were all so diverse, which I really, really liked. I liked the fact that everybody came from a different region. Like Wolverine was Canadian. Colossus was Russian. Storm was African. Nightcrawler was German. It was, and you know, a bunch of other, like Banshee. They had Banshee, and he was from Ireland. I enjoyed that they had a really diverse group, and it wasn't necessarily something that they shoved down your throat. That, hey, this is diversity, and you're gonna like it. They did it because it seemed more organic, and it worked. And even though, like I said many times already in this video, even though this is not my original copy, I will tell the story about my original copy, which I sort of transferred to this copy because it's still technically the same book, although not the same copy. When I got my copy, it was, this is a 6.5, so my original copy was probably like a 3. Maybe on a good day a 3.5. I don't know about that, but it wasn't a bad looking low grade. It could use a press by today's standards and really clean it up, you know. So maybe it could have been a 3.5 or maybe, you know, or a 4, but whatever. It's not important. But one of the biggest memories I have about Giant Size X-Men is when I first bought my original copy. That copy, the one I just described, I went to a convention in maybe March of 1994, April 1994, and a guy was selling that copy, and he wanted $65, I think. $65. I don't know. I have to watch my history of comic collecting to remember. I think it was $65. And I had 50. And I said, oh, but I also have these trading cards. I had, like, you know, those Spider-Man trading cards. And I had a couple of the Chase cards, and he sort of looked at me, smiled, and he could tell that I was really desperate, and he gave me the book anyway. So that's a really cool memory for me, and that's one of the reasons why I think about Giant Size X-Men. I'm like, yeah, it really brings me back and says, yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite books. Second book on the list and final book for this video. I know we've run about 5 minutes so far. I don't want to keep you too long, as you can see right here. It is Batman 121, first appearance of Mr. Freeze. Okay, so why is Batman 121 one of my favorite books? Well, I've said this in other videos. Now, it's a 4.0 copy. The reason why it's a 4.5 is because it has a stain on the cover, as you may see. But other than that, it's a really nice copy. I mean, it has a sun shadow on the back a little bit, as you can see. So that brings the grade down. But other than that, the book has hardly any creases on... Oh, sorry. I'm getting too much glare. Hardly any creases on the spine. No chipping. No blunted corners or anything like that. Things like color-breaking creases, that are on the corners that really bring the grade down, and I don't want to say the visibility of it, but the attractiveness of the cover. It doesn't have any of that except for that stain. And the stain does go through the first wrap, but then that's it. That's what the notes say, at least. I never opened it. I mean, I didn't get that. I bought this graded. And I think that's the reason why this book has been hit really hard with a 4.5. But I still like it and all of that. So, I remember Mr. Freeze from watching the Batman 66 series. He was okay. I can't tell you that, oh, well, it was that series that made me really like Mr. Freeze, because it wasn't. It introduced me to Mr. Freeze, but that was about it. What made me really like Mr. Freeze was the animated series, and I think that's the way it was for a lot of us out there. Maybe not some of the old-timers that recall fondly the 66 series and liked a lot of those characters, Mr. Freeze included. But a lot of us that were growing up in the 80s and the 90s that maybe saw the 66 series and rerun and liked it, but then when we saw the animated series, we really got introduced to a lot of Batman villains and reintroduced to Batman villains like Mr. Freeze, that was given a proper backstory, and the actor Michael Ansara did a terrific job with him. The way he spoke, Mr. Freeze was always different than the other characters. Yes, the Riddler was very smart, but you could tell that when you say something wrong to him, he gets rattled. The Joker was crazy. Two-Face was obviously, dual personality. He didn't really have that much clarity or that much intellect as Mr. Freeze did in the cartoon. It's like when he talked, he was meant to be a cold character in the way he presented himself speaking. But he was a sympathetic character, which made you say, well, I don't agree with what he's doing, but, you could almost feel for the guy. And the way he delivered his lines, the actor and the character and all that, there was a sophistication behind him that, he was smart. He was calculated. He chose his words carefully. He wasn't easily rattled like the Riddler would be or other villains would be. If Batman attempted to foil his plot, he would just, react and try to stop Batman. But he was very, very calculated, very true to the name, Mr. Freeze. He had a very cold personality. And that was one of the big things that really attracted me to the character. And on a final note, one of the reasons why, and I mentioned this in other videos, why this is one of my favorite books is because when I said I wanted to be a Batman collector and I wanted to legitimize my collection, this was the very first big Bat villain book I was able to get. And that started me on my road, which took about a year to get some of the really, really big Batman villains in my collection. Characters like Two-Face, which I don't have anymore, but all the others that I still have, like Man-Bat, the Riddler, the Scarecrow. And I'm not talking about their Bronze Age appearances or Silver Age appearances. I got those, but they're golden ones too, like World's Finest 3, Scarecrow, Detective Comics 140, the Riddler, and so forth. So it's a pretty special book to me, and one I'm very happy with in my collection. And another little note, this is just how messed up I am. When my son came home from the hospital when he was first born, everyone's taking pictures of him, and I took pictures of him. Obviously, I always take pictures of him. And sometimes if you follow me on Facebook or you follow me on Instagram, you'll see pictures of him. One of the first pictures, like I said, I'm really warped. One of the very first pictures I took of my son was He was in his carry-on, and I forget which side it was. Maybe I'll include it in the video. X-Men #1 was pictured right next to him, my old copy, the one with the really, the cover took a lot of sun damage. And the other side was this one. So, hey, if I was willing to put this comic book in the same picture as my son when he first came home from the hospital after being born, the book must be meaningful to me. I know, it's warped. But anyway, thank you all for watching Favorite Comics, Episode 3. I'll be releasing more of these as the months go on, and I hope you tune in to watch. Take care.